welcome to the second episode of Silent Stages. We're X Generation now. My partner Paul Lutz is joining us. And then we have two guests that I'm super excited about. The first one being Kevin Curtin, who is a journalist for the Austin Chronicle. He's got an amazing Instagram account, which I enjoy. he's he's quite the mind bomb sometimes. New father too as well, which we'll probably dabble into that because Alex is fairly new to that game as well. And Kevin also performs in a band or two, and he's a big fan of Cheetos, which I learned just recently, and oil lamps, kind of. I don't know. And then also we have Alex Maas. Uh, he is the founder of the Black Angels, um, curator of Levitation Fest. He just released a solo record, which is absolutely amazing, and I love. What else do you do? Got a record label?
Yeah, I'm in a band called Mean also.
Okay.
Can't leave out those guys.
No, no, sorry.
But I've you know try to just kind of get my hands into all parts of the music industry, from music productions to making film music for film, composing for documentaries and commercials, and all the 30,000 things you have to do to make a living as a musician.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Diversify. Well, cool.
Yeah.
We could start, I guess, by this series that we're doing is kind of to bring awareness to the situation that the music industry is in currently because of the pandemic. We want to incorporate all sectors as much as possible. We want to have artists. We want to have people on the journalist side. We want to have people that work in studios, people that work in venues, wherever, just to kind of get a better understanding of where the music community sits right now, um, and what adjustments have had to been made, what we're looking at for the future. Do we have any kind of idea? I'm sure we've all been thinking about, like, what is live music going to look like in 6 months or a year or 2 years, and what's going to be left standing. So if you guys could kind of give us like a point where you had that realization that this shit was real and your life was going to change, and some adjustments needed to be made pretty quick in order to kind of figure it out, you know pertaining to the music industry. I know that we all had to do that in our regular lives, but pertaining specifically to your craft and what you do professionally.
For me, it was, um, I guess March 5th, I think it was. I heard that I found out that South by was going to be canceled the morning before the city made an announcement, and um, as leading up to that announcement, people were still thinking that the announcement was going to be that South by was going to continue to go on. I think, um, and at that point, for a lot of us, whether or not you South by is something that you think is great or you think is something that's obligatory. It's something that dominates the first quarter of all of our years, right? And certainly those weeks in March. So for me, when the announcement that South by wasn't happening was coming down, that is when I realized that, like, life will kind of life was forever changed, because there was a year where there was something that I do every year is not going to happen, and then from there, I think we were still in denial about how long it was going to last and how vast the impact that it was going to have on live music was. Um, so it only snowballed from there over, I would say, the next 3 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, I take the same stance. I was in the we had just spent the last 5 6 months getting ready for our South by for Levitation, right? Finding the venues, getting everything, getting all our venues. Um, that's always a battle. We just got done booking five really, really good Black Angels shows that we're going to. And that's a lot for us now, but they're all just like, it was just really good money, and it was actually going to get like the money that I was potentially going, the band that was potentially was going to make was going to, you know, help us get through the rest of the year, whether if we didn't do a tour or not. But I also had a tour like in the future. So whenever I found out that South by was canceled, you know, I was in the studio wrapping up the last bits of recording the Black Angels record, and I remember getting getting the news from the mayor, and just being like, all right, guys, well, I'm gonna go home. I mean, we were kind of done anyways. I'm just gonna go home and like kind of check on the family, make sure like the world's not gonna completely just like, you know, fall apart right now, like like it does in the movies. Like I go home and like everybody's eyes are bleeding, and like, you know, some Ebola weird stuff. So, yeah. So then shows start getting canceled, but they were all kind of iffy, right? It was like, oh, well, you know, these shows still might go on, and this private event might still happen, and every single one of those things that dropped off, it was just like, you know, months and months of income for our band. That, you know, we were just like, oh crap. And we also had a tour booked in the fall, that was going to be an east and west coast, and probably heading over to Europe. So you know, not only, you know, so that was potentially, that hadn't been canceled yet, but that was still kind of in the scopes of being shot out. So yeah, I was instantly like, okay, well, what am, you know, really relying on that as an artist, relying on that money, and these were some of the best paying South by Southwest shows we've had. It's like you always like we've been doing it for like 10-15 years, and you finally get to the point where you can like be like, all right, now this is all that work's going to pay off, you know, all, you know, and this was kind of the year that was going to happen. So yeah, again, didn't know how bad it was going to be, at all. And but just once South by got canceled, I kind of just figured that like, okay, well, who know, you know, the rest is done. But I didn't, you know, I didn't know exactly. Uh, but yeah, same here. It was just kind of pretty heartbroken. All, of course, all of our friends. I mean, all of our friends here that live in town, you know, rely so much on that. And so, I you know, I wanted to boohoo and whine about it, but like everybody is going through it. So who do you complain to? Like everybody was losing gigs and losing money. I think the thing that I was most bummed about is not being insured, as a promoter, and um, from the show standpoint, not really having much insurance at all, from canceled shows from something like a pandemic. It's never happened before, so it just wasn't written in the liner notes.
Yeah.
Um,
Is it a thing? I mean, I'm sure it probably is now, but
well, no, I mean, maybe it is now, maybe it's not, but it definitely wasn't before. Catastrophes and things like that, but they worked their way around it to where it was like, you know, most people didn't have to pay. Um, and you know, obviously the government could have, like we always do, the government prints off as much money as they want all the time, um,
yeah, yeah.
and you know they couldn't quite figure out how to figure this out.
Yeah. So we had a conversation with a representative from NEVA last week, kind of like laid down exactly what they've been doing and what they've been involved in, specifically the Save Our Stages Act or legislation, which I think is pretty incredible. I'm curious as to how you view the Save Our Stages. I mean, obviously nobody's seen anything from it yet, or maybe how you view what they're doing as an organization being super beneficial? Is there more that can be done, do you think? And I mean, I mean, there's a lot of organizations doing different things and we can touch on local, but let's kind of like talk about NEVA specifically. I'm sure, Kevin, you're pretty aware of the guys, and what they're doing as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's been a long road for them. They've been, as I'm sure they told you, they've been trying to get this legislation to happen for a really long time and gaining support for it, and um, and it's gotten more traction recently, and that money is incredibly essential to independent venues. I talk to people who own venues probably on a weekly basis, just casually or for my work. And I think that people are in a little bit of denial about how much debt they're in. There's people who are in Austin who are hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, and maybe if you thought about the prestige or name brand of their venue, you wouldn't be able to believe that they don't have more money than they do. So I don't think that while we've seen, we saw about 16 venues close locally in 2020. Um, I don't think it was the bloodbath that we expected, but I think that the effect of it has really yet to be seen, because I think that there's people who have instead of bailing out, continued to take on serious debt. So it's a really, really pressing issue, and I think that the the federal money that NEVA has campaigned for is incredibly important, because while the local funding is looking like it could, give everybody a total of $140,000 max, that's realistically that's not enough to put them back into the black, right?
Yeah.
So it's really important. But one thing that I think is getting lost in the greater conversation is, like, I don't personally believe in trickle down economics with music venues to musicians, right? Like, you can work at a music venue if you're a grassroots musician and as a bartender or a door person, or a sound engineer, and make some money. But realistically, you can't pay your rent by playing at Mohawk every week in Austin, in a general sense for musicians. So I think that we're gonna need to see more efforts to put money in musicians' pockets who are already a victim of an affordability crisis in Austin, and then had the pandemic only make it harder. So the venue funding is really important, but also I'm hoping we see more funding geared specifically towards musicians.
Yeah. So, and at that point, how do you feel that the city and the organizations that are in Austin that are representing the musicians, what kind of progress or lack of progress that they made? Me personally, and I'm not an artist, but I've been following it, and I've been to a few of the rallies at City Hall, and it seems like the push to get the city to allocate funds for musicians has been difficult, and the result is minimal.
I think the venues just got the $20,000 of emergency funding in December, and the monthly sustained funding hasn't hit yet. So it's too early to say whether or not how much of that is going to come through and how helpful it'll be. But I will say that the advocates are uh, doing the work of the angels. I think that they're
Yeah.
trying as hard as possible. And I mean, like, even what the Red River Cultural District is doing with HEB gift cards, it's like, oh man, well, you can't pay your rent with an HEB gift card, and it's like, well, what the fuck is anyone else doing? You know what I mean? At least you can feed yourself.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, I think that brings us to a bigger point. That what Kevin is touching on is that Neva, they're on the right side of history, right? They're doing something. They're being active about this, and in reality, musicians are on the low, and venues are on they're the low man on the totem pole, low man, low woman on the totem pole, and so, but like if you look at the economic impact of music, it's billions and billions of dollars. So it's we're looked at it down here, but like if you look at like what we're actually contributing to to society, it's beyond beyond all the cultural like richness that music has to offer and art. Like that's where the real value is. They're just not even like I say they, I mean like the government doesn't really consider it as like something that's high on the totem pole. And like I understand like I mean they have we had a really fucked up government here for the last 4 years, and for the longest time. It's like it's Biden being in office is great, but it's not going to save everything. There's a lot of deep seated issues, but like I'm trying to see like when are they gonna? And they are starting. And there's legislation, people advocating for musicians and artists in general. But in other countries, I just look at other countries and like how much reverence there is for artists and musicians, and it's a totally different thing. And as much as America cares about money, and they should realize the economic impact and benefit. They might not ever realize the cultural benefit of art, like all the other countries. But once they do, once that education, once that finally sinks in, then we might start to rise a little bit on the priority list. And I mean, to be fair, I can't imagine the situation that the government's in trying to roll these vaccines out, and but one thing they have been able to do is give billions of dollars to big companies that don't need it, and big companies who are taking advantage of it. And in knowing how economics works for the most part as a layman, I know that government's printing off as much money as they can as fast as they can, and it's not causing inflation. That was always the thing. Oh, it's going to cause inflation. It's going to screw the economy up, but just not going to. They're just going to keep printing more and more off, and it has to do, like, if they print off, like, you know 500 billion dollars and try to save the music economy. I think it'd just be shunned and looked at as a waste of time and money, and that's just the sad part of it. Not to be a nihilist, but I think that's the reality of how they see it.
Jordan, go ahead, Bill.
Have our bands, Alex, eligible for the PPP program?
Yeah,
That
yeah, they are. I mean, you really have to have your ducks in a row. So I mean, like, we they are, but it's not a lot. It's not a lot of money. And even if I had a tour booked, scheduled, and everything, two of them booked, and those weren't recognized as potential lost income because they just hadn't happened yet. So that's like me having a contract with to buy 6,000 Dell computers, um, having the conversations and having a date and actually buying a plane, buying plane tickets to get there, but it never happened. And but then I'm not reimbursed from that potential, or they're not reimbursed by my potential money that I was going to buy the computers from, and it's really bizarre. Like it, the other thing that the PvP kind of didn't help us in certain situations is I didn't tour last year, like in 2019, and so they took it to 2019. They'd look at your 2019 as what you made in 2019, which wasn't a very good year for me, and they based it on 2019 what they were going to give, even though I had a solo record coming out, Black Angels record coming out, so all this kind of like potential growth of the company, it was just not like recognized. But there were other companies, major companies, who had huge developments I've been working on this record for 4 years. My solo record 3 years. They've other companies have been working on iPhones and all these new things, and they all got paid for potential losses. um
well, it
and
seems to me like with the computer reference that you made, if you were the person selling the computers, it seems like you bought all of the components and all the every you spent a lot of upfront money
yeah,
and bought everything that you needed to build those computers.
yeah,
And so
yeah,
you've taken major front end investments
and
that
action, yeah,
action and that are not then, you know,
yeah,
the contract is not fulfilled.
yeah.
It's just a big
And it,
screw job.
it is, and I think it just keeps going back to like what unfortunately, like how musicians and artists are looked at in America. I think that's kind of like the bottom line. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, it's
Well,
just not taken
I
very.
think it's super sad, especially like in a city like Austin. I used to live there as well, but it's 20 years ago. But you've had this huge influx in population, like tons of people leaving California and coming there. Why are they coming? Well, because of the what you know about the city, which is so tied to music. Certainly a lot of people are coming there because of the culture of the city, which is so tied to music, which, as you're saying, Alex, is a huge draw and part of the overall income and
Yeah.
economic engine of that city beyond
Mhm.
even just the day-to-day
Yeah.
income that it drives.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
brand,
absolutely.
especially in Austin.
It is. If the city's going to claim and monetize and promote us being the live music capital of the world, then you better help save that. Otherwise, it's super hypocritical. Now, I will say that there have been a lot of like grants that came in through musicians, and I'm sure everybody knows that I applied for a music cares grant 2 times. So I got two $1,000 checks, or one was 1,000, one was 1,500, one was $500. So um, that is something. Does that pay half of my bills for 1 month? No. And having a child, and so we can't really, Luca right now isn't in daycare. We can't really afford it, but that's, you know, you know, Kevin and I talked about how much of a blessing that kind of is too, being able to, really spend all this great time with your family. But like in Canada, I have friends in Canada who are like, oh yeah, we're not touring, we got you know all these grants and we're fine, and they're not worried at all. Like Rishi from, he's just like, all these people are just like, you know they're able to do it, and it's the wealthiest economy in the country, I mean in the world. We haven't quite figured that out, and I think it still has to go back to how, what America thinks about culture, and not just tying it together. And what you said about culture is just so important. They moved here for the culture. They did move here for tax breaks, but they also moved here for culture, and that's all intertwined. And I would say music, maybe, I'd love to think it's the main reason why they moved here, but it's a main component. But if you didn't have like your South by Southwest and ACLs and all these newspapers that are just so music focused, like it's so ingrained, it's so intertwined, that it's kind of like synonymous, I think. Yeah.
And sometimes with dire issues, you'll say, how bad does it get before America decides to recognize the financial and cultural value of music, right? How bad does it have to get? Oh, if it gets worse and more musicians leave, then people will recognize it and make changes. But I think that we're at the bottom right now. I mean,
Mhm.
everybody's really struggling, and
Yeah.
yeah, I'm really concerned. I'm really concerned about Austin with affordability of musicians, and the pandemic being kind of a straw that breaks the camel's back with that,
Mm.
and then also, you know, um, on a national level, like wanting people to create the best art possible, and that being a potential path for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time thinking about what it's going to look like, because I moved here in 91, and the reason I moved here was because of music. And I've immersed myself in the music scene in very different formats, whether it be a fan or a blogger or photographer, working with bands. And you get to understand that this ecosystem that exists, it happens over time. You can't just build it. So I don't know what it's going to look like when that starts to fall apart. I mean, people can come in with money and say Samsung builds a new venue or a small venue, but without all the people that existed before that ecosystem, is like, what do you have? Like, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm
Oh, no, no. I think it's a good question. It's a good thing to put yourself in that reality. Like, let's just take a second and think about what it would be like without music, and really think about that. Like, you turn on there's no radio, there's no music behind any film, there's no music to get you through your day. It's unfathomable. I can't even, like, as much as I want to try to even wrap my mind around it. It's like, you have this beautiful sounds of nature, and that's like the closest thing we have to music, and but like imagine not, just imagine, think about it, and like, and so how we got to the bottom, there's not, they always say there's not like a bell at the top or the bottom of any kind of market saying that you've hit the bottom. But like, yeah, it seems like it can't get any worse than this, right, Kevin? Like, who knows? I mean, like, I feel like there's light at the end of the tunnel, which is a good thing with, you know.
I think there's going to be some pretty interesting creative, um, not necessarily options, but I think the smart, super creative people in the industry are going to be forced to just be even more so, um, under these circumstances. And what may come out in the end might be more interesting than what we had before. I don't know, you know.
Yeah, we
Um,
talk about that Darwinistic approach to how we are as humans, and that whole, survival of the fittest, and people are, they get really creative, and yeah. So Kevin, it's like, guys, I mean, is this, are we just going to be watching um, streams of musicians, more so, like, is that and if so, is that something that's okay, as from it just depends. It's like, are people okay watching, like, just having a whole Netflix channel, and you have this big crazy MTV type new thing that pops up, and you pay $25 a month, and all the money goes to the artist. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you could look at it.
That'd be a that would that would be a great solution, because I do think that there's, what we've all gone through in the last 10 months is like live stream university, where it's like,
Yeah.
I mean, at one point I had to play a wedding for someone in my hometown on Zoom,
Oh, hey, wow.
and you're like, everyone, you have to call your friends and say like, hey, what Zoom presets do you have to turn off? We can see it right now.
Yeah.
Turn on original sound, and like, what kind of a mixer really works for this. And so we've all been to Zoom University as artists, but we've also realized what we like and don't like about live streams during this time. And I realized right away, it's like, wow, there is an alchemy. I've gone to shows 5 nights a week since I was a teenager, and to have it taken away, huge lifestyle change, and you realize what it was, and it was this alchemy of like, sound hitting you, people being around you, this kinetic energy of the crowd,
Mhm.
um, all of your senses doing something, and then also it being large. And I think right now, we've watched it on a lot of small screens and seen that it doesn't have the same emotional resonance and the same impact, at least for me. So then you're kind of adapting, and you're like, okay, like like next week, or I mean, 2 months from now, South by is going to be largely on. People are going to be watching it on their TV, right? The people who go to South by online, it's going to be like you're watching it on, Roku or something like that, right? Like a channel. So the bigger TV, I think a lot of people have found is it's better than your phone and it's better than your laptop, but I still don't think it completely scratches the itch. And then also whether or not artists like doing pre-taped live content or an actual live stream. And
Mhm.
we're seeing a lot of people, do both. And I'm seeing a trend towards the pre-taped live content because you can do more interesting things with it. Um, but we're learning so much right now
Yeah.
about that world, and we know that that world is coming. But I feel like we haven't seen the thing that is going to click and be permanent yet.
Yeah.
Maybe
The thing.
seminal strains of it.
Well,
Mhm.
Alex, where do you stand on the streaming shows? I mean, is that something that you guys are trying to use to supplement your income?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, like, it would, from, we'll take it from the festival standpoint. The festival has been doing these live levitation streams. So we had like, we did like an OC show, and there were like 4,000 people who watched the show, and they paid like, I don't know, it was like 15 or $20 a piece. 4,000 people. So that, I mean, that was like, that was a really, and then you add, so then you're able, not only, so you have this like show, right? Then you have, so I mean it's promising is what I'm getting to. Then you can still sell merch. You can get analytics from the people who are watching your show. So I know that like two people in wherever, like Sweden, watched at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I have their email address, and so I can kind of like, you could do direct marketing to those people for the next time you come through, if we ever start touring again. So from the analytics perspective, it's really really interesting because you're really knowing, you're really finding out who is actually watching these things and who's engaging. I do think that, like Kevin said, it's obviously not the same. From the artist perspective, it's better than nothing, And so I've done some of these that 100 people have watched, and I've been involved in some where 10 people are watching, and then like you have to, I think it's the best thing to do is to have like a Venmo like code on there, so you could be like, hey, just can you send me some, if you want to send a tip here to this thing, which seems like I've like, if you could have asked me 2 or 3 years ago to I would have been like, no way in hell I'm gonna put like my PayPal or my Venmo up to beg for people to give me money to play for them. Like that's just like seems so tacky. But now it's just kind of like, oh well, it makes sense because there's no other source of income. So what do I feel about it? I feel that it's definitely, it's better than nothing. If hologram technology was here today, we could have the Rolling Stones playing in our backyard tonight, but just not yet. So I mean, like you could see how it could really. I mean, it's here, but it's not affordable for everybody. So, I've been looking at like virtual reality things, VR shows, which are kind of like a next kind of step, and but it's still like Kevin said, it's just that synergy and just being in that room, like we all know, and getting hit with these loud sounds and the smells, all your senses, just they're not there. So
Nothing's going
and
to replace that
nothing's gonna replace that,
ever.
but like ever. So, but I do think in a very Darwinian kind of way, I think it's like, yeah, like you say, Michael, it's like people are gonna get in there and they're gonna sink or swim, and they're gonna find creative ways to make this work for them.
I
But it's
think
not.
part of what I was saying is that in the end, when it does get a little bit more towards normal, that we're going to see, I don't know if I say creative, but I guess people are going to be that much more excited to be on stage and to be at shows. So hopefully they're going to be bigger and just like more amazing than they were before. And maybe that's just me like seeing some
Yeah,
utopian,
yeah.
you know.
Well, it won't matter. We made this joke, Mike, that it won't matter if like if me and the rest of the band are up there playing koozies. Those shows are just gonna be amazing. It's like, or not koozies. What are those things? Kazoos.
Kazoos.
If we play koozie, that might be different. But if we're all up there playing like 20 people up there playing kazoos, just like, I mean, all those shows are gonna sell out. And it's just like, and
Yeah.
it's just gonna be crazy. People go, "Oh my god, I never realized how much I love this stuff." But like, so I think there's gonna be, and this might lead into something else. But like, when are things going back to normal? So we have a tour. We have tours that we're booking right now in the fall, and the first 2 months of touring that happens in the world is just going to be ballistic. Ideally, it would be so backed up that everybody wants to see their bands. It just lasts like a whole year of like peak oil or whatever, and everybody's just like geeking out about shows. But those first 2 months are going to be the months to really get in. But like we have a tour booked, and then we have like another tour booked just in case that doesn't, in case that one, so we're kind of staggering and kind of hedging our bets and staggering like tours on top of tours that are just unrealistic, just in case things aren't back to normal.
Yeah, Jordan from NEVA brought up an interesting point that I didn't really think about, is that not all like when you're booking a tour, you're booking a string of dates across cities across, say North America. If not every state or location is quite ready, then that disrupts the whole like planning process, or like
Absolutely. it'll make or break your tour. I mean, if you can't do LA, it's like okay, well, I guess we'll play Boise and come on home, or whatever. No offense to Boise, but like you miss one or two of those dates, and just as a touring artist, and Kevin, as a touring musician, it's just like one or two bad things could happen on tour that just kind of make your tour break even tour.
Yeah, yeah. So Kevin, writing for the Chronicle and handling and writing about the local music scene and music in general. I mean, how has that? What transitions or pivots have you had to make, and as you personally, and I guess the paper itself?
Yeah. The First of all, I mean, the Chronicle is an independently owned mom and pop kind of business. So when the pandemic hit, we were wondering if we were going to survive, right? It's supported by advertising sales. Largely our advertisers are based around businesses where people gather. None of that was happening. So, there was a period of whether or not us wondering, what are, we're asking existential questions. And then, I've noticed that my editor Raul Hernandez, has taken the approach of um, the Chronicle is always going to list every live show that's happening, but where we used to spend at least one page every issue just doing like a calendar of this week's show blurbs, the ones we recommend, that hasn't been happening, and it's shifted towards uh, single releases, album releases, live streams, virtual events, and they never made an announcement about it. I wish they would have, to say like, we don't want you to gather, so we're going to do this. I mean, I think it was just implied, right? So in that, much of the last 8 years of my life, has been spent in a music venue, uh, watching live music, and I haven't done that this year. Um, Partially because I've had a child, and I don't want to. I don't know what the long term effects of COVID are. I don't want to give my child COVID. Partially because we make, as a household, we try to make our decisions on a common good philosophy, and we know that like gathering indoors or in large groups is not good for the common good. So I've had that part of my career and my life stripped away, right, for the last 10 months. No, not going to shows. Um, so what I think that we have to do as people, and it's the same thing for me as a journalist and for other journalists, is find other ways to better ourselves, right? So if like a regular person, they can't do the activity that they normally do or the social thing they normally do, but they learn some other stuff that makes them happy or makes them fulfilled or makes the world better. So um, I don't know. For me, I've gotten into a lot of weird habits about like keeping voluminous listening logs to music that I listen to every day, where it's like I'll listen to like three, maybe two local records and one national record every day, and keep track of everything and what I liked about it, and uh, covering that more, learning to learning to really love the side of recorded music, and both in terms of playlist experiences and album experiences. Like I think in the last few months, especially, it's like I have these beautiful moments with albums and that remind me of when I was a kid and I was too young to go to shows. And I would listen to records and just be like, "Oh, it's so cool to see this band." Uh,
Yeah, oh, totally. Yeah, I never thought about that.
and I've been having those experiences again,
That's cool.
and it's been meaningful. So, trying to relate that and trying to, I mean, I think always we're trying to stoke the general public's enthusiasm about music. And so, yeah, right now it's a shift towards recorded music. I'm hoping that, like, as live music, I don't use the word safe, because I think the word safe has become like meaningless, in recent weeks or recent
Mhm.
months, So I just say like when uh, gathering becomes, something that I'm comfortable with, going back out, trying to support things that I think are important and I haven't been able to support as much as I wanted to. And hopefully, in me doing that, my Instagram feed will go less to me doing weird, funny shit at home and more to like the regular scheduled programming of me showing cool videos of bands in a live setting. So, uh, hopefully, what I've learned during this period improves the regular scheduled programming when I get back to it.
So
So,
speaking of
what,
albums,
well,
go
hold
ahead.
on, Michael. I want to ask Alex about
Go
that real
ahead.
quick. What about creatively for you? Like, the Luca record is a departure from other, stuff with your band. It's like such a cool new kind of thing. Was it a pandemic record, and how
No.
has your creative sort of journey been informed?
Yeah, I mean, no. So it wasn't a pandemic record. It was written before the pandemic. It feels like it is when you listen to it, but it's totally not. But those values on the record are just values that I feel like pre-pandemic, post, and then just into the future. Hopefully, that all those values on that record are still true 20 years from now. But like for me, I was just like, you know, I spend a lot of time in the studio. So, it's the main change is that like I had like most of my income coming from touring is just not there, right? So it's like now I'm just back in the studio doing what I was doing. So like not a lot has changed for me personally, other than like going out and spending too much money, on like food or whatever. So I've become more creative, I think, in this time. And definitely have found, like I was saying, other ways to just stay focused and keep my mind busy. um, I'm in the studio. I'm writing and recording all the time, and so it didn't change that part of my life that much. um, the touring aspect and the financial impact of that, that being half of my income or more sometimes, that's the biggest thing that I've felt. But I've been staying busy, man. I've been like, writing a ton, and I've got plenty to do with my family all the time, and building tons of forts. So I'm getting really good at that. um but yeah, if anything, it's giving me more time to focus on this. And I don't really like, I haven't been writing a ton of, it's interesting, I haven't been writing a ton of songs that have been like, this all sucks, everything's just shitty. Those are my songs are like, what are we gonna do when this is all over? Like, can you feel the end? It's so close. Can you smell? I can taste it. Those are the songs that I'm like writing. It's writing into the future, but not really living, not really about the the you know the aggression and being cooped up. Like that doesn't do me any good. I don't think writing about that. For right now, maybe whenever things are better, I'll write about things being shittier. But when things are shitty, I kind of go the other way.
So Kevin, do you see with the newer recordings that are coming out, listening to as much as you do you see pandemic anxiety, stress, depression creeping into that more so than that's presented in music as is? But
That's a really good question. I mean, there's no way that the anything written in the last 6 to 10 months could not be somehow impacted by it. But the thing that jumps out at me the most, and I hope it's something that has a lasting impact, is uh, interesting production. I think we've all had to, you know, I mean, last night I imported a bunch of, I was on Google Hangout with a drummer who I work with. He's recording on, Ableton. I use Reaper. He Dropboxes me the tracks, and they're all too fast for some reason, right? Like, and you're just like, oh man, how am I gonna? Well, I'll sample the drums. I'll take the snare and sample it. And you, we're like, you know, making shit out of broken stuff, and sometimes it's great, right? And I'm listening to new music and thinking, well, this wasn't three people playing live in a studio. Probably there's so much less of that, right?
Yeah.
And so one thing that is amazing about Austin, Texas, is that you can collaborate remotely right now with a bunch of amazing people. And also, if you want to play bass on your own track, you can borrow your dream bass from one of your friends.
Yeah, it's there. It's not on the road.
This bass in the world is
Yeah.
4 blocks away.
Yeah.
Um, and anyway, I think all of that informs a kind of you know, a DIY production technique that I think people are just gaining skills, right? And those skills are important if it leads to more creativity in the future and more agency where people feel like they can get a song to a certain point before they need to get it to a mixing engineer, you know? And I know that a lot of our recording people in this town have adapted to that too, where they're like, wow, I'm really used to like sprucing up uh, lo-fi recordings for people and finishing stuff off. So, um, I see that in music, and I think that I'm seeing, a lot of cool recordings and creative stuff, and I think that it'll have a lasting impact. But as far as like, the sadness, I mean, we've all been through 4 years of a, openly fascist political leadership in our country. So like, I think that frustration was simmering long before that.
Yeah.
In my
You
opinion.
know, like,
And it was just icing on the cake.
yeah, it's like a shit pile. Um, I like you say though, Kevin, I really do think that adaptability and people who are willing to just be fluid and sort of adjust, like in sort of this Darwinian challenge that you mentioned, Alex, like the bands who can roll with it and are flexible and are able to be more forward thinking and can, like, you got to be savvy, like you're saying, like follow the analytics and, reach out to the person overseas that's watching your live stream. And it's might come down to the survival of the who is more creative, who can make those adjustments. um so that just suggests an even greater challenge, for everybody. It's tough.
Yeah. I love how you're talking about the recordings kind of getting, you didn't say the word shittier, but the recordings just getting like just like more lo-fi, and it's just like really like maybe I don't have like, yeah, like film recordings, cell phone recordings, that was the cool thing to do. Now it's necessity. I remember sending about like, or I remember receiving like about 3 months ago, somebody sent me a track, and I was like, I actually emailed the guy. I was like, so this thing that comes in here at like 2 minutes and 30 seconds, is that a drum or is that a drum or is that a vocal? Because I couldn't actually tell, which is like, like kind of amazing. And of course, and like, I can't remember, he came back. Yeah, that bait, essentially, that's kind of what his answer was. But those kind of things are just great. And like to that point, I think we're going to be seeing a lot of like just like really cool, like going back to like that, you know that kind of lo-fi sound being fucking where it's at, like really cool, like shitty sounding drums. It sounded like it was recorded in like 1964, and somebody's like beating on their wallet, and all of a sudden you have Buddy Holly drum beat and somebody beating on a box. It's like I love I love the idea of that, and I love like people's ears going back down to that kind of just what the essence of a song is, and not being like overly just like boom, super produced and super monster sounding. I
Yeah,
love field recording sound.
Paul and I were just talking about that new Buck Meek record, and what we liked about it was that kind of vintage, that modern vintage sound, similar to like what the Walkman, did. It's like I like that stuff. I like it for it to feel that they're banging around on some crappy
Yeah,
piano in some living room somewhere. So
yeah,
I've found myself drawn to these Numero Group playlists. It's like so soulful and just it kind of like it nurtures me a little bit.
What kind of playlist?
It's there. This it's a reissue label called Numero Group. Amazing. They've like they got all these soul and funk reissue artists. But it just kind of it just puts me in a good place, you know, more than maybe I would have listened to more hardcore, you know, edgier stuff right now. I don't have the I just don't have quite have that in me. I need a little more kind of old school nurture. And actually your record, you know, does that as well, Alex. I feel like
We just need to be coddled right now.
yeah, just no more virtual hugs. I need a real one.
Compliment I would like to give Numero Group for anybody who doesn't know like how deep their searching for music goes. They put out a record that had a relative of mine on it. They put out a record called Wayfaring Strangers, and essentially it was a compilation of music that they found that roughly sounded like Graham Parsons or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of my relatives, Dan Pavlidis, who was never a famous musician, and he died in the 90s, ended up on it. And apparently they'd found his record. He was from Michigan. They found his record in a dollar bin at a record store in Hawaii.
Wow.
Awesome.
That totally reminds me of like Light in the Attic, those Light in the Attic stories.
Yeah, totally.
Oh yeah.
Like, man, that's proof that they're really turning over rocks. You know?
Yes. That's so cool. That's awesome.
Well, so hey, Michael, we're kind of we're taking a lot of these guys' times. Do you want to ask another question or two and then let them?
I mean, you know, I think we covered most of what we wanted to. Obviously, we could chat for much longer, but you know,
one quick thing, Kevin, I was reading an article that you wrote about these no permit shows in Austin. What do artists think about people gaming the system? And I mean, so here's this guy coming in at a super spreader event, you know, and he's making revenue. And here's the you know, people like Alex sitting at home. What has been the sort of result of that type of activity?
Well, okay. First of all, I would say that, like, you know, in my eyes, it's like 2/3 of musicians have decided, you know, this has been the deadliest month in pandemic history, both locally and nationally, right? January. So, you know, during this really bad time, I think about 2/3 of people have decided not to play, and then 1/3, you know, are doing shows. And I don't judge it. I try not to judge anybody because I think people play music for a lot of different reasons, and they have, you know, different worldviews or whatever. But I will say this: for me and a lot of people I know, we've sacrificed a lot this year in the name of like public safety, in the name of your mom not getting COVID and dying, and my mom not getting COVID and dying, and not fucking making it worse than it is. We've sacrificed like the thing that we're used to doing, the thing that, you know, we feel is culturally important, the thing that we make money off of, da 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 da. So you make these big sacrifices, and then when you see somebody throw an event that's like, you know, like an anti-mask musician or something, throw a big event where they encourage people to not wear masks and you know, and no one can stop us and freedom and shit, you know, you wonder if they realize how much we've all sacrificed, and for them to do something that could, you know, have a greater impact than in the opposite way than all the sacrifices we made. And to me, it's bullshit.
Yeah.
You know, to me, it's bullshit. It's like, whatever cause you're promoting, you know, like you just haven't had somebody close to you die, you know, or you're not aware enough to know that you or someone at your event was the typhoid Mary for their godfather getting COVID and dying. It's like all you have to do is like know somebody who lost a parent and realize that they would do anything in the world to make that not happen. You know? And so yeah, I think it's a dick move
Yeah, I 100% agree, and I think, and I'll go back to what I said earlier. If this was Ebola and the actual physical symptoms, where you bleed out of your ears and your eyes and your organs internally melt, and it's extremely painful, like I'm pretty sure people would be wearing a mask, and it would have been handled differently, I no doubt the administration screwed that up entirely, but these, like Kevin said, like it's like, oh, most people think it's like a little cold, or they haven't been directly affected by it. It is, we've all put so much time and effort into this for the greater, good of what we're trying to achieve here, which is, annihilate this virus. And so, yeah, when you see these super spreader events, it's just so like dumb Republican ideology. It's the same, super spreader, like let's go have a big, like, Trump rally, and I've just put those people in the same category, like instantly. It's just like super selfish and insane. We're so close to the end. I can see, I can taste it, I can see it, I can like feel it, and like, let's just not fuck it up yet. We're almost there.
Yeah, selfish is a really good word.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you guys have any specific organizations or ways that you know about where people who see this can help and try to give back and support artists, venues, journalists, anybody in the industry that you know about?
I have one that is, I think we should all start calling each other by our Venmo accounts instead of our names.
Hey, I'm totally okay with that now. I was on the fence about that earlier, but I think that I'm gonna have that on my shirt. Is it not showing up right here? It's not showing up on my.
We're gonna have a graphic.
We'll tag it on to the end in the edit. How's that?
When you go to the dentist and you ask, like, how can I support musicians, and you're like, well, HAAM does this for healthcare and Sims does this for mental health and substance abuse. Both of them really important. Or, you could just give me a break on the bill today.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of, that's what I'm saying is direct action. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Direct action. If you know somebody who in your life who you care about, who is a musician, like, they're not going to be sheepish if you tell them that they're struggling and you want to make a donation. It's kind of, it feels awkward for me to say that, but like, I really think that like most people know somebody who could use their help, and if they're in a position to do that. Also, great organizations like HAAM and Sims.
Cool.
Excellent.
All right, guys. Well,
hey, it was a pleasure talking to all you guys. Good seeing you.
It was great to talk to you guys. Yeah. Can't wait to see your kazoo tour, Alex. That you do.
Thanks.
Koozie tour.
Yeah, koozie. It'll be both.
Let us know about that. Yeah, okay. And you'll see me in the crowd waving up at you when you come to LA.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. Well, let's make that happen, Paul. Nice seeing you guys.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
Okay.
Right. Take care, guys. Appreciate it.
There's a man on the garage. There's a man